Hello, I'm Craig DeLuey. This is number 0838, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0838. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet David Rush, who is a multiple Guinness World Record holder. His latest feat is being hit 96 times in the face with wet sponges in a single minute. What's the hardest part of such an accomplishment?
It's kind of uncomfortable because the sponges have to be fully immersed in the water before they get thrown. And then they're coming at my face pretty quick. You're not allowed to wear goggles or anything like that, so you got to shut your eyes. His aim's pretty good, but I do need to adjust most of the time because it has to hit you square in the face. If it glances off the side of the face or hits in the ear or something, that doesn't count. So I got to move into position. And then the sponge is hitting my face, and those are, some of the scratchy sponges. You got to shut the eyes before it hits the face. And then you have to open up again in the split second as that next sponge is coming at you.
Dr. Michael Aziz discusses why alcohol use in the United States has hit a 90-year low.
Young adults in general, they have alternatives. They're involved with their phone, Instagram, Facebook, and busy with all the social media. It's also after the pandemic, many people were staying home, so they're going less to bars. But also, in the same time, there is an increase of other substances, like the legalization of marijuana in general, that led to many young adults shifting from alcohol to marijuana.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back with his monthly visit, and he has a new book out called The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil, 1850s to 1920s. This was a time period that was known as the height of spiritualism.
Modern spiritualism began in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, with two young sisters, the Fox sisters, Maggie and Kate Fox, and really took off very quickly, having these seances where suddenly it was believed that we could have these communications with the dead. Mediums started popping up all over the country, across the pond in Europe as well. And then you had the Civil War breakout, and you had those mass casualties. Because there was so much death, you had a lot of people who really wanted to believe that they could make contact with their lost loved ones and friends. Mediums were taking advantage of that and helping people connect with those lost loved ones.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0838, was Craig DeLuey, who is the author of My Ex, the Antichrist. He was a guest back on show number 0835, so you can hear that and hear all about his book. Thank you very much, Craig, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. Federal investigators say a man in Morristown, Tennessee, has been using the identities of various famous sports legends, such as George Herman Babe Ruth, in an elaborate scam scheme. His legal name, George Herman Ruth, though it's unclear if he was born with that name or changed it. The 69-year-old Ruth has been indicted on 91 counts, including mail fraud, aggravated identity theft, fraudulent use of Social Security numbers, money laundering, and, very tellingly, making false statements to his supervising probation officer. That was related to his pleading guilty in 2020 to conspiracy to defraud the Social Security Administration and Internal Revenue Service. He was sentenced to 56 months in prison in that case. In the new case, he faces up to 20 years in prison, plus a $250,000 fine. Wow, he's going to need money. He better get going on signing those souvenir baseballs, especially for the kids, like the original Ruth did back in 1932.
Hello, babe. How do you feel?
Fine, Sonny. How's yourself?
All right. Well, I'm glad the Yankees won.
Well, so am I.
I guess I'll see you in the World Series games then.
Well, I hope so. I guess I'm one of the lucky fellas to be able to get into 10 World Series, and the way I feel now, looks like I'll be in there.
Eva Gannon, the owner of Stefanina's Wentzville, an Italian restaurant in Wentzville, Missouri, has been begging people on their Facebook posts, please do not use Google AI to find out our specials. Google AI is not accurate and is telling people specials that do not exist, which is resulting in angry customers. Eva goes on to say, we cannot control what Google posts or says, and we will not honor the Google AI specials. Google's AI tools was making up special deals and menu items when people search there and, said Gannon, it's coming back on us. As a small business, we can't honor a Google AI special. And what has Google said about all of this? Absolutely nothing. Google wouldn't even respond to a local TV station's inquiries, let alone the restaurants. You know, color me cautious, but I think this is the kind of story that heralds in the beginning of the Borg.
Strength is irrelevant. Resistance is futile. We wish to improve ourselves. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service ours. Freedom is irrelevant. Self-determination is irrelevant. You must comply.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, Jim Klassen of Summerland, BC, called Napoleon, the Canadian manufacturer of his trusty but old barbecue grill, to order a spare part. Neither Klassen nor Napoleon can explain how, after the call, Klassen's phone number ended up being listed on the company's website for support questions. But sure enough, Klassen's phone started ringing with up to 20 calls per day. Klassen and his wife, who also answered multiple calls, didn't get angry. It's just not who we are, he said. Well, of course, they're Canadian. They simply answered the support questions. Napoleon got the problem fixed, but the calls kept coming anyway because by then, Google's not terribly smart AI kept giving out their number to people searching for support. Of course they did. Like we mentioned earlier,
strength is irrelevant. Resistance is futile.
Once it was all finally settled, Napoleon named the couple honorary customer service ambassadors, and the company's VP of marketing said, of course, we're retiring them from this role. But fear not, their brief recognition also came with a new top-of-the-line free grill. So a happy ending all around. As a proud Canadian myself who grills year-round, regardless of the weather, I hope the Klassens' new grill is everything they hoped for and more. But not too much.
And our sizzle zone is like grilling on the sun. Put it all together and see why with Napoleon, built different means built better.
Strength is irrelevant. Resistance is futile.
And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. David Rush has willingly been hit 96 times in the face with wet sponges in a single minute, and for that, he, along with Jonathan Hannon, the man tossing the sponges, has yet another Guinness World Record. David personally holds more than 181 Guinness World Record titles. He has 47 that he jointly holds with Jonathan. David joins us from Idaho via Riverside.com. Hi, David.
Hello, Peter. It's good to chat with you today.
It's great to have you on the program. Thank you very much for being here. So I'll just ask the first question right off the bat, and that is simply, why?
So I started breaking Guinness World Records titles to promote STEM education. It's science, technology, engineering, math, to show students that if you set your mind to go, believe in yourself, and pursue it with a passion, you could accomplish virtually anything. And I started with juggling records and then balancing, and then it has since branched out to I can learn any new skill if I see a record, I'll be like, hey, do I want to spend some time practicing to break that? And then I also got to hang out with my best friend, Jonathan Hollywood Hannon. And so we could do these two-person records together. I found out he was ambidextrous. And so when he's throwing stuff at me, he can throw both hands. And when it's most hits in a minute and he can throw two at a time or use two hands at a time, we can get a bunch of those throwing, catching, hitting records. And so this falls in that category.
Since you brought up his ambidextrous trait, let's talk about this current one, which is the most times being hit in the face with a wet sponge. How did this come about? I mean, was this something that was already in the record book? How do you decide to go and do a particular feat?
Yeah, so I've broken over 350 Guinness World Records titles at this point. Currently hold somewhere on the order of 190 with records that have been broken. Most of those, the vast majority, probably 90 to 95% existed already, which means it was in the Guinness World Records database, and I saw the record. I either saw it on Guinness World Records YouTube channel or in the book, or somebody had posted something on it, like, hey, that's something I could do, especially those two persons ones with a throwing one. They always jump up to be like, "Hey, let's do that together with my friend Jonathan." And this falls into that category.
So, what was the toughest part of being hit 96 times with wet sponges?
So it's kind of uncomfortable because the sponges have to be fully immersed in the water before they get thrown, and then they're coming at my face, pretty quick. And you're not allowed to wear goggles or anything like that, so you got to shut your eyes. His aim's pretty good, but I do need to adjust most of the time because it has to hit you square in the face. If it glances off the side of the face or hits in the ear or something, it doesn't count. So I got to move into position. And then the sponge is hitting my face, and those are, some of the scratchy sponges. You got to shut the eyes before it hits the face, and then you have to open up again in the split second as that next sponge is coming at you, and then you got that blurry water in the eyes. Get your head in position, and then shut it again. Close to two times a second.
Did you practice this beforehand, or did you just do it in the competition?
Yeah, so this is one actually requires a substantial amount of practice. In fact, there's a most wet sponge hits to the face in 30 seconds and 1 minute. And I think this was our fifth time doing those records. So we practiced for it substantially. I think we've broken the 30-second one three times, and this was the second time going after that 1 minute record because we broke somebody else's record. Our record was broken, and we had to take it back.
With the titles that you have jointly with Jonathan, do you do everything? In other words, are you the victim in all of these, or is sometimes he the victim?
I wouldn't say victim, but in many cases, I am the victim. There's the hardest one we've done together is actually the most baseball passes between a pair in 1 minute. And in that case, we're both doing the exact same thing, catching the baseball, taking it out of our gloves, and throwing it back and forth 10 meters. And that one took probably a year of practice before we were able to successfully do that. And that has been challenged by professional baseball players on TV shows. And the best they were able to do was actually tie our record. One that he was more the victim on was the most ping pong balls caught in shaving foam on the head in 30 seconds. And in that case, I was actually the thrower, and the shaving foam was on Jonathan. And so I threw, he caught. And that's one where I would consider him the victim because he had all the shaving foam on him.
Well, speaking of distance, how far were you from Jonathan when you were being pelted by these sponges?
Oh, I don't remember if this was a 3 meter or a 5 meter. This must have been a 3 meter one because it didn't seem that far away. But it could have been five. I don't actually remember.
Are there any records? I mean, since you hold so many of them, are there any records that have eluded you? There's something that, your great white whale that you've tried and you just couldn't master?
Actually, the very first one I tried to break was the fastest half-mile run while juggling. And the record was, I think, around 2 minutes, 13 seconds for a half mile. So, a little under 4:30 pace. And I trained for over 2 years, ran over 2,000 miles trying to get that one. And at the end of all that, I ended up hurting my knee. And at that point, I had a decision to make: is do I give up on my dream of breaking the very first Guinness World Records title, or do I pivot? And what I talk to students about, they'll struggle at science and fail at math and say, hey, I could never become an engineer. But if they have grit and a growth mindset and believe they can accomplish it, I do believe you can learn any new skill. And so even though I couldn't run for probably a year and a half because of this injury, I decided to pivot to practice for longest duration blindfolded juggling and broke my very first record in 2015 with that at 6 minutes 35 seconds. I've gone on to break that record multiple times now and hold it at an hour and 2 minutes of blindfolded juggling. But I haven't gone back to go after that half-mile run while juggling record. And at 40 years old, I'm not sure I'm going to get the speed necessary to ever take that one down. But it's always been in the back of my mind. Am I going to go after that one or not?
Well, you've already mentioned earlier why you've done all these things and what was your motivation. What is your day job?
So for most of the time, I worked in tech. I'm a product manager. I've got an electrical engineering degree from MIT and MBA. And so I work as a product manager making wireless routers. And I worked at a startup company in Boise for 13 years, left that for a couple years to be a full-time keynote speaker, stay-at-home dad, and travel the world. And now I'm back working in tech as a product manager at another cellular technology company called Digi International.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, has any of the contests that you've entered in, and first of all, I mentioned that you hold 181 Guinness World Record titles and you have 47 jointly with Jonathan. Is that collectively? In other words, overall you have 181? Or do you add the ones you had with Jonathan on top of that?
Yes. So there's a couple ways to count. One is the records broken in total. So I've broken over 350 Guinness World Records titles. 47 of those 350 were with Jonathan Hollywood Hannon. But sometimes those records are surpassed either by me or somebody else, or somebody else will break it and I take it back. And so that if I've broken the same record multiple times, it fits into that 350. That 181 is what I currently hold that has it's titles that are currently in my name that have not been surpassed by somebody else at the time. I currently held with Jonathan Hollywood Hannon is going to be somewhere around 20-ish. I don't know what the exact number is on that one, but we currently hold probably around 20 of those 47 today.
Now, I've seen some of these Guinness World Record events that have taken place, and usually when you win or you surpass another title, you get this plaque. How many of these things do you have, and where do you put them all? Do you have a wall?
Yeah, so you get a paper certificate for all of them, or previously you did, and I've got 350 of those, and I actually just have a stack of them in the top shelf of one of my son's closets. Occasionally, I'll pull them out to take some pictures or something, and then I'd maybe have three or four of them in a frame that I might travel around when I'm doing a keynote talk with. But for the most part, they stay in a stack on the shelf of the closet.
Are any of your titles or any of the things you've attempted actually dangerous?
There are several records that are dangerous. One of the most difficult ones I've got is the most kiwis sliced in 1 minute with a samurai sword while standing on a Swiss exercise ball. And so it's a razor sharp samurai sword with a pointy point. And I'm standing on, that round Swiss exercise ball that's bouncy. And so it's pretty unstable. And so if I were to fall off of that ball, there's plenty of, force that if I landed on that sword wrong, it could be devastating. And so that's one of those ones that I'm like, hey, I do not want to make a mistake. And then there's others that are dangerous for different reasons, like the longest duration juggling at over, 13 hours, 10 minutes now, or the furthest distance traveled while juggling on foot. So I ran 29 miles straight while juggling, and obviously have cramps and issues like that with dehydration and such.
Have you ever been hurt?
I've definitely had some injuries in my time. I've had some nicks there with the samurai swords or juggling knives while slicing apples. The biggest injuries actually are more like the lower back ones. I've got a bunch of records for balancing things on my face, like the longest time to balancing a running lawnmower on the chin, or the longest time to balance a running chainsaw on the chin. Those have the risk factor of those running items that could, hit my face. But the injuries are actually the lower back, the pain from holding all that weight uh, along the center of my body for that long. And it's usually, the neck hurts in the moment, but it's the lower back that really gets injured if I'm not careful about ramping up the weight, especially during the training, preparing for an attempt.
We all do crazy things in life, and those crazy things we tend to enjoy. and we don't necessarily see the risks in doing something. But you are a multiple Guinness World Record holder, and you've already mentioned that all of your certificates are in your son's drawer. If your son decided that he wanted to follow in your footsteps, would you be proud or aghast?
You know, it's a family activity already. I've got two sons and a 2-year-old daughter. Sons are 9 and 7. One of the ones is the fastest time to do a 10-meter stroller push, and my son was the one that was in the stroller, and he absolutely loved participating with that one on me. And so we have a lot of fun doing the records together. Like the longest time to keep 3 balloons in the air. My kids all love playing keepy uppy with those balloons with me. So it's a lot of fun to make it a family activity and spend time doing those challenges together.
This year is the 70th anniversary of Guinness, and they have, for their anniversary, revealed some unclaimed record titles on their website. Are these any of the titles that you would like to attain?
You know, possibly. I'm not sure off the top of my head what those titles are, though.
Okay, well, I'll mention some of them. Most whoopee cushions sat on in 1 minute. Further distance bottle flip. Most high fives in 30 seconds. I think you can do that with your sons. Fastest 400-meter sack race, and there are several others.
You know, any of those would definitely be options for me. I believe that anyone can learn any new skill. And even if you're not good at it when you start, you can train to become better at anything. And so if I were to go after one of those records, I'd have confidence that I could break it.
Maybe your two sons could do this next one. Most leapfrog jumps in 1 hour by a team of two.
That would be a fun one, but exhausting.
Most stackable potato chip crisps eaten in 1 minute. Most table tennis balls held in one hand. Most t-shirts put on in 30 seconds.
Wait a second. Most t-shirts put on in 30 seconds. I think I hold that one.
You hold that one?
Yeah, I think I got 20 t-shirts put on in 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, the Guinness World Records people apparently say that's up for grabs.
Yeah, I think there's a up for grabs doesn't necessarily mean somebody doesn't hold it, but somebody could certainly go after that record.
Well, congratulations on all that you've done. People can check out your YouTube page for any of the things that you've done in the past, and it's very delightful and very fun. And again, you're doing it for a good cause, so kudos to you.
Hey, Peter, thanks so much for having me on.
Multiple Guinness World Record holder David Rush. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0838, and you'll find the links to David's site and also his YouTube page. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
Did you hear that laughing too loudly is illegal in Hawaii? They only permit aloha!
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffileprogram. program.
I'm standing on skates for Canada. Hi, this is Ron McLean. It's an honor to welcome you to Team Canada, where we all have a position on defense to buy Canadian products, support Canadian businesses, and protect Canadian workers. We all know what it means when it says Canada on the sweater. Let's make sure it says Canada on the label. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
Available on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and just about every other way you stream audio. This is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's radio that's everywhere you want to be. In some places you don't.
And still to come in the program, we will talk about alcohol consumption in the U.S. We'll also chat with Marc Hartzman, the curator from WeirdHistorian.com, who has a new book out called The Talking Dead. We also have a morning shower thought coming your way a little later on, and an idiot of the day, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. You know, we just spoke to a multiple Guinness World Record holder, so here's another story about another winner. A New Zealand woman set a Guinness World Record by running barefoot across Lego bricks in 24.75 seconds. Gabrielle Wall completed the 100-meter sprint over loose Lego pieces in Christchurch. The 328-foot track contained 661 pounds of Lego bricks donated by Imagination Station, a nonprofit focused on robotics education. Wall prepared for 2 months by going barefoot to develop calluses, even attending a wedding without shoes. Said Wall, "I'm proud to have pushed myself to new limits." Guinness noted that the mother of two has probably stepped on the plastic bricks more often than she can count. Guinness said that Wall wore sunglasses, presumably to hide her tears from the pain of standing on all the Lego. Wall plans to attempt more Lego-related records involving building rather than running. Yeah, because perpetually running on Lego blocks will eventually lead you to a hospital.
The new emergency collection from Lego City. Each set sold separately.
Meanwhile, police in Adelaide, Australia have arrested a 41-year-old man for allegedly stealing over $250,000 worth of Lego and toys from department stores. Authorities uncovered a massive haul of 2,500 items, including 1,700 unopened Lego sets, during a raid on the suspect's home. The stolen goods were apparently intended for online resale. The seized merchandise, which filled 3 truckloads, represented the largest retail theft bust in the state. Police warn consumers to be wary of suspiciously cheap goods sold online, as this fuels the crime. The operation has led to a drop in shop thefts in South Australia, with 2,500 arrests made. Retail crime remains a growing global problem. You know, crime doesn't pay, especially if Lego is on the case.
The new police collection from Lego City. Each set sold separately.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, it's time to play a brand new game. Welcome to Stuff File Bingo! The object of this game is for listeners to have their imaginary bingo cards. During this next story, I'll ring the bell every time a red flag comes up. At that time, you can yell bingo. Here we go. A 46-year-old employee wearing an inflatable dog costume outside a Florida puppy store allegedly strangled a bike-riding juvenile with whom he had an ongoing dispute. Rodney Plathy, who works at Sunshine Puppies in Clearwater, was outside the business one early evening when multiple juveniles rode up on their bicycles. Said police in the statement, at the time, Plathy, a registered sex offender, was wearing a puppy suit costume. The business is adjacent to a busy roadway, and the costume worker, aka a sign spinner, serves basically to attract the attention of passing motorists. Investigators allege that Plathy, who had previously tangled with the young riders, waved the juveniles over to him. Plathy was joined outside by the puppy store proprietor. As the owner was addressing the group, one of the juveniles sought to ride away. As the owner grabbed the bike's handlebars to prevent a collision with himself, Plathy approached the victim from behind and placed him in a chokehold. The male victim, whose age is not listed in court records, told police he was unable to breathe for a brief period of time until the defendant released him seconds later. Officers were then contacted. Plathy was arrested for battery by strangulation, a felony, The defendant, according to the arrest affidavit, showed an indication of alcohol influence and refused to speak with cops. After 2 days in the county jail, Plathie was freed upon posting $10,000 bond. A judge has ordered him to have no contact with the victim. Plathie has an extensive criminal record with multiple battery convictions, as well as convictions for burglary and drug possession. He spent 6 years in prison for a 2013 sexual battery case that resulted in his designation as a sex offender. Plathie returned to state custody in 2022 and spent about 30 months behind bars before getting released last October. I would like to know why a drunken sex offender was even hired to wear an inflatable puppy suit, but then again, I guess puppy suit wearers don't have thorough background checks. But hey, thanks for playing Stuff File Bingo! And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? In the U.S., there's been a seismic shift in young adults' drinking habits, and experts say it marks a powerful cultural and health shift. A 2025 Gallup poll shows only 50% of adults under 35 now report drinking, reflecting an 18-point drop since the early 2000s. By the way, a recent survey here in Canada found 54% of Canadians sometimes have a drink, the lowest since 1939. To discuss this, we're joined by Dr. Michael Aziz, a board-certified internist and regenerative medicine specialist, and the author of the best-selling book, The Perfect 10 Diet, and the new book, The Ageless Revolution. Dr. Aziz joins us on the line from New York via open phone. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Just tickety-boo. Despite the numbers that we are seeing, is it not just a possibility that there was a much larger young population back in the day, that being the baby boomer, of which I'm at the tail end of? Does that skew any of the numbers, or is this an actual fact that less people are drinking at a younger age?
You know, as a physician in practice in New York City, I see more and more people who are very much health conscious. A growing number of Americans are more informed about the negative health and the consequences of drinking too much alcohol. Young adults in general, they have alternatives. They're involved with their phone, Instagram, Facebook, and busy with all the social media. It's also after the pandemic, many people were staying home, so they're going less to bars. But also in the same time, there is increase of other substances, like the legalization of marijuana in general, that led to many young adults shifting from alcohol to marijuana.
Well, that was actually my next question, and the fact that there are now other things than just drinking that young people can imbibe in.
Yeah, I mean, the legalization of pot in the United States, the stores are everywhere. You walk now on Madison Avenue, everywhere. The stores is like every other store is one that is selling marijuana, which is not a good thing, because even though it's less habit-forming, it can lead to emotional issues. It can cause psychosis in some people, schizophrenia, and so on. So it's a mixed number we have here between people drinking less, but also the shifting to marijuana use.
Again, as I mentioned, there is that large chunk of baby boomers that did a lot of things back in the day, but also isn't the rise of alcohol, at least in the United States, attributed to the fact that after a certain period of time, prohibition was repealed and people were now imbibing in something that before they just legally couldn't have? Like marijuana these days.
I don't think so. I think young people in particular are more health conscious. You know, in New York, everybody goes to the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now people are involved in biohacking. They want to stay healthy. They want to stay sober. They want to do intermittent fasting. They want to eat healthy. They want to age in a different way. And they know that alcohol is detrimental to health. If you drink too much, that increases the chance for many types of cancer. It can cause liver damage and so on. So I see many people now more health conscious than the older generation. So, it's not surprising to see that the Gallup show that less young adults are drinking in general.
Is there a particular reason why young adults seem to be more health conscious?
Well, it's also the cost. Going to a bar, having a couple of drinks, you spend $40-50. So I think also the cost of living, inflation, it started with the older administration here, and it continues after COVID. The prices of everything is up, not just alcohol, but everything. And that's also leading to more people staying home.
So in a way, you're almost saying it's lack of availability, in this case, price. But if it were as easily or readily available to the youth as it was to previous generations, would you still see the same situation? I mean, it's hard to quantify that because we're talking hypotheticals here. But is it something more inherent than just the cost of alcohol?
No, like I said, I think younger generation are more interested. They're more health conscious. They want to hit the gym more. They want to. I have patients who talk about their heart rate variability. They talk about how many. They have all those gadgets on their wrist that check how many hours you slept, what's the quality of sleep, and so on. And that's why this generation now is much more focus on health and all this gadget that help us stay healthy.
Now, I mentioned in the introduction your two books, the one which is the bestseller, The Perfect 10 Diet, but the new book, I only mentioned the title of the book, not the subtitle, The Ageless Revolution. The subtitle is 10 Hallmarks of Aging That Hold the Secret to Defeating Disease, Reversing Age, Looking Younger, and Living Longer. Is that really accurate? I mean, you can't reverse age, can you?
No, you can't say that, Peter. Actually, we have new advances in medicine. That's the reason I wrote this book. In 2012, scientists have discovered 9 hallmarks of aging. Now we know why the cells deteriorate, why we age, why we get old, why we die. And then during the writing of the book, 3 more hallmarks were discovered, and I cover all of them. So really, there are 12 hallmarks. And if we can treat aging as a disease, that's a new concept, you can reverse aging by a good 10, 20 years. You can prevent the age-related illnesses that kill us, heart disease, stroke, cancer, dementia, which happen in the older generation. And that book also goes with the trend we're seeing that more people are health conscious. They want to stay healthy. They want to reverse aging. They want to look young. And, it's a new way to age.
Well, you brought up dementia, and dementia is something that predominantly is in an older demographic. And I'm just wondering if part of the rise of dementia is just the fact that we are living longer.
Yes, we are living longer, but also we don't see dementia in many parts of the world where they live, and they eat correctly. So also dementia is linked to drinking too much alcohol, is linked to a very much like heart disease, eating too much carbohydrates. So if people exercise more, do more anaerobic activity, eat more food that is rich in antioxidants, blueberries, strawberries, eating more fish 3-4 times a week, they're less likely to develop dementia and Alzheimer's disease, which is I also cover in the book.
Is, quite frankly, part of the problem that we have, I mean, obviously you're focusing on diet here, is part of the problem we have the fact that we have urbanized our lifestyle and we are, for the lack of a better term, in the lower to middle class, and with that comes bad eating habits?
In the Ageless Revolution, the first part of the book, I talk about lifestyle, where we went wrong in the United States and Canada to live such a short life. The average lifespan in the United States is only 76, which is like 14 years less than Monaco and Switzerland. So the diet plays a huge role. Sedentary lifestyle, processed foods. 50% right now of the American diet is processed food, sugar, refined carbohydrate. And that's not a good thing. We have to be eating food that is not only rich in nutrients, but superfood that I talk about in the book. Like in Okinawa, Japan, they eat sweet purple potatoes, which have more antioxidants than blueberries. In China, jagulan tea has more antioxidants than green tea, 7 times more. But it's also talking about how those people in the blue zones and beyond incorporate exercise without going to the gym. So, they all like for example, in Sardinia, it's a very lot of hills. They do their 10,000 steps without having a Fitbit or counting their steps. They're just doing it every single day. So, of course, exercise is helping them not only prevent heart disease, but also prevents dementia.
Again, excellent points, and we're just about out of time, but I want to mention your 2 books again. The first book, which is a bestseller, is The Perfect 10 Diet, and the new book, which is just out, The Ageless Revolution, 10 Hallmarks of Aging That Hold the Secret to Defeating Disease, Reversing Age, Looking Younger, and Living Longer. I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us, Michael. Before I let you go, I have one last question. Do you drink at all?
Moderate drinking is okay. So if you have like 5 drinks a week, not all in one session, is okay. And actually, it can make you live longer. But if you drink beyond 5, 6 drinks, that increases the chances for liver cirrhosis, liver damage, dementia, and so on. And I think you guys in Canada are doing better than we are in the United States. Life expectancy in Canada is about 81. Not great, but it's better than the United States. But at least you're ahead of us with life expectancy and lifespan.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael, for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Michael Aziz, author of the best-selling book, The Perfect 10 Diet, and the new book, The Ageless Revolution, 10 Hallmarks of Aging That Hold the Secret to Defeating Disease, Reversing Age, Looking Younger, and Living Longer. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0838, and you'll find links to Michael's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Why do we think that people who wear glasses are naturally smart, when in reality, they failed a test to get them?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Here's a penny for your thoughts from the Stuff File program, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, a country that doesn't have pennies.
And still to come on the program, we have Marc Hartzman with a brand new book. Plus, we do indeed have an Idiot of the Day coming your way, but I've got one more Stuff File news to share with you right here, right now. And the bells signify that it's time once again for the Darwin File.
I am Grim Reaper. I am death.
A Texas man is facing a murder charge after allegedly killing his friend while the two played a game with a firearm. In what Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez called hard-to-believe circumstances, so-called friends 37-year-old Sean O'Donnell and 34-year-old Aaron Prout allegedly took turns shooting at each other with a rifle as the other wore a Kevlar helmet inside a house in Spring, about 30 miles north of downtown Houston, until things turned deadly. Deputies responded on August the 17th to a call that was initially reported as a possible suicide. There they discovered Prout, a British national living in Texas, suffering from a gunshot wound to the head. He was taken to the hospital, but could not be saved. Sheriff Gonzalez said things weren't adding up with the suicide story. Eventually, detectives charged O'Donnell with murder on August 28th and booked him into the Harris County Jail. Why would two friends play Russian roulette with a Kevlar helmet and a rifle? Well, because the tree of life is often self-pruning.
I have come for you.
You know, that story is very similar to the Idiot of the Day, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, we have our last guest on the program. Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com, is back on the show with a story for the month of September. And this story is, in fact, that he has a new book out. It's a new expanded edition of The Talking Dead, which reveals ghostly messages from William Shakespeare, Abe Lincoln, Mark Twain, and more. Marc joins us via Riverside from New York. Hi, Marc.
Hi, Peter. How are you doing?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us once again. So the full title is The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil, 1850s to 1920s. So this was a book that was out before, correct?
Yeah, I put this book out in, I think, early 2021. It was something I was working on for my sort of side project called Curious Publications. It was helping me get prepared for Chasing Ghosts, which came out from Quirk Books later in 2021. And it was just this weird compilation of these words from beyond, as I said, beyond the veil from the 1850s to the 1920s. And as I was doing research, I would just find all these different old publications. Sometimes it was old newspapers or old books that would feature what mediums were getting through their seances, whether it was through automatic writing or just through other kinds of communications from these various ghosts. And some of them were just sort of random spirits on the other side describing what life was like beyond the veil. So I found those really interesting. And then beyond that, there were all these amazing words supposedly from celebrities, these dead luminaries who were coming back to continue giving their views of the other side, continuing to write in the case of like a Mark Twain or Edgar Allan Poe or Shakespeare, who remained very prolific after death. So there's a first section called Spirit Teachings, which is all these different beliefs and wisdom imparted from the other side. And then there's a section called After Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, which are the different celebrities. And then there's a third section called Heaven on Mars, which is all about the spirit's vision of what she encountered when her spirit visited Mars. So those are three different sections. And since I did that book, I've come across so many other words from beyond. So I've been wanting to do this for a while, to create this expanded edition with 40 new pages, which includes words from Charles Dickens and Oscar Wilde and others. It's just a very bizarre, fascinating collection. Spirit Teachings, for example, you don't learn what you would probably want to learn, like what's it like when you die, like, these sort of interesting truths. But one question, for example, someone asks, what can you tell us as to the locality of your sphere? And the answer is, there are no words in your language which we can make useful. Verbal words of expression are inadequate to express that of which there is no equivalent on your plane. So not too helpful of a response. But these are the kinds of things you get from these ghosts.
I remember you talking about what was called the spiritualist circles of the day. Just how popular were these events back then?
They were really popular. Modern spiritualism began in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, with two young sisters, the Fox sisters, Maggie and Kate Fox, and really took off very quickly, having these seances where suddenly it was believed that we could have these communications with the dead. Mediums started popping up all over the country, across the pond in Europe as well. And then you had the Civil War breakout, and you had those mass casualties. And because there was so much death, you had a lot of people who really wanted to believe that they could make contact with their lost loved ones and friends. So mediums were taking advantage of that and helping people connect with those lost loved ones. So that continued to be popular into the 1900s. And then World War I happened. And again, you have this event where you had mass casualties. And there was another spike in spiritualist mediums who were helping comfort people by sharing the supposed words from the dead. So this was a pretty popular thing. Some people also, would attend seances more as just entertainment. It was a thing to go enjoy and experience. You'd go to a small parlor room and sit around, everyone kind of touches hands around the table and we see what happens.
Now, I remember Not too long ago, one of our previous months, we talked about the fact that Houdini would try to debunk all of this. I'm assuming that there were other people who tried to debunk all of this.
Yeah, first of all, there were other magicians who also working alongside Houdini to help debunk. And Houdini had a whole team of investigators who were helping to debunk spiritualist mediums. And then there was a lot of scientists who were studying them. A lot of the scientists were believing quite a bit of it, but there were others who were also figuring things out, figuring out ways that they were doing certain moves to create certain effects in the different seances. So, yeah, there was definitely a good group of people out there trying to prove them fraudulent, and oftentimes would. But there were also some mediums who were very good at what they did and fooled a lot of people. And then we talked about, I believe, with Arthur Conan Doyle, who, despite being told by Houdini that they were fake and other people that they were fake, firmly believed that many of these mediums were authentic, including his own wife.
I don't necessarily believe in all of this, but the interviewer in me, if I had the opportunity to talk to some of the people like a Shakespeare or a Dickens or a Twain, I would have just one question for all of them, and that is, did you think that in our day and age, you would still be that popular?
See, that would be a great question, especially for someone like Shakespeare, who had been dead about 300 years when he was coming back and writing Hamlet in Heaven, a sequel to Hamlet, through a medium's hand. Yeah, so it is amazing to think that three centuries later, you're still very popular, and you're the author of choice to come back through me, and the one I want to feature, with my mediumistic skills. But others had been more recently passed, like a Mark Twain, for example. That would have just been a few years after his passing, so obviously he was still quite relevant. I mean, still relevant today, but at the time, very, very recently relevant. So yeah, I think that would be a good question, especially for someone like Shakespeare.
In researching this book, I'm sure you had a belief, yay or nay, about this issue in total. But now that you've done the book, does it sway your thought process in either direction?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say, first of all, I don't believe that these words are genuinely from the ghosts of the people. I don't think that Mark Twain was coming back and writing these novels through the medium's hand, through the Ouija board, which is some chapters are covered in The Talking Dead. I mentioned Hamlet in Heaven from Shakespeare. I don't think the ghost of Shakespeare was writing that. I don't think Edgar Allan Poe was coming back saying that he regretted that he lived such a dark life and didn't live a more pious life, and then tried to correct those with his afterlife, his posthumous writings. So I think a lot of this was mediums' ways of either gaining some attention, some profit, or trying to espouse certain religious views that they could then put through these voices of famous people. That's not to say I don't completely think that there could be some sort of spiritual connections we can have. I'd like to think that we live on in some way and that we don't just turn into nothing. So I would say that what I'm presenting in the book, I find fascinating because it's what people said was happening, and it's interesting to read the conversations and the writings that these people were producing. And the fact that it happened, I find really, really interesting. I don't believe that those words are authentic as they were portrayed to be.
How popular were some of these writings back in the day?
Well, there was, I'll say this, a lot of them got attention and were not well received. For example, Mark Twain, who wrote a book called Jap Heron, a full book written through a Ouija board. So again, using the medium to go letter by letter to write this book. And it got reviews in the press, and the reviews were not good. They didn't think it lived up to Twain's standard. So I thought that was actually quite amusing. That his posthumous writings were panned by the press. But then there was another posthumous author who also got press attention. The spirit's name was Patience Worth. She came through a medium named Pearl Curran. This particular spirit was very prolific, wrote over 1 million words through this medium's hand over a course of decades. One of them was a 600-page book about the life of Jesus. Lots of religious writings from this particular spirit. And the spirit was writing in like a weird kind of archaic, described as like a weird archaic English language mixed with an accent from a speech from the Ozarks in Missouri. So it's like a weird mixture of language. The examples I give in the new expanded edition, it's interesting to read through, and the author or the medium tries to explain a little bit of what this person is trying to say. But that person apparently, had some popularity. The medium was continuing to sell books for a long time. assume that's why that medium kept bringing forth the word of Patience Worth. Apparently it was worth it.
You mentioned the reviews. Did any of the reviews kind of question whether these people were actually beyond the grave?
Yeah, I think that they were sort of acknowledging it with a bit of a wink, but still enjoying being able to critique it. In fact, I mentioned Jap Heron from Mark Twain, and that book actually resulted in a lawsuit from his publisher because the publisher was saying, well, anything that comes from Mark Twain is ours. But then the question became, well, does that include the ghost? And I think they eventually dropped it because it was the ghost, but also was it even something they wanted to claim was worthy of Mark Twain. But this was a case that happened. Like, it had repercussions.
The book is called The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil from 1850s to 1920s. Mark, thank you very much once again for being on the program with us.
Thanks for having me.
Marc Hartzman, the curator of WeirdHistorian.com and also the publisher at CuriousPublications.com. He's the author and curator of several books. His latest one, The Talking Dead, a collection of messages from beyond the veil, 1850s to 1920s. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0838, and you'll find the link to Mark's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff Out presents the Idiot of the Day.
I told you this was similar to the Darwin File story, and it is. A man accused of shooting his cousin to death in Texas allegedly said the incident occurred because he wanted to test his family member's reaction time. 21-year-old Jose Magarino is up on murder charges. The incident is said to have occurred on September the 1st at around 5 p.m. when 19-year-old Emmanuel Nahea and his younger brother arrived at Magarino's house to celebrate Nahia's birthday. When the topic of guns and concealed carry came up in conversation, they apparently went to Magarino's room. Magarino gave Nahia a gun, saying he wanted to test his reaction time. Apparently, he doesn't know the only person who is
faster than a speeding bullet.
He told police that he had attempted to remove the rounds from his own gun. Magarino is believed to have shot his younger cousin as he called 911 and told the operator that he had accidentally shot Nahia in the chest. Dallas police responded, and Nahia was transported to hospital where he later died. The suspect was arrested, and he reportedly said he often practiced with his gun and believed he had taken out all the bullets from the gun before pulling the trigger. You know, even I know there's one in the chamber. He was charged with murder. So I guess he doesn't know who is faster than a speeding bullet.
Superman!
Because if he did know that, then why, oh why, would he need to test his birthday boy cousin's reaction time? One reason, and one reason only. He's an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0838. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestuffile.com. And once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0838. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, or you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. If you were listening to this at the same time as watching The Wizard of Oz and listening to Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, Well, it's a waste of electricity. There are some things you just can't multitask.